My arrogant wife allowed her best friend to propose during our wedding day, even though I said no. Now she regrets everything because I want a divorce. My wife and I have been planning this wedding for over a year. We agreed on everything except the guest list. I knew my fiancée was going to choose her friend Julie as her maid of honor. Julie can be a bit self-centered at times. When we go out with friends, she always orders the most expensive dish and then insists on splitting the bill evenly because it's easier. She often makes and cancels plans as she pleases, even if it messes up my entire schedule. Once, I was planning a romantic dinner with my fiancé, but Julie showed up at our house unannounced with drinks, saying she wanted to spend time with her best friend. I tried to tell her we weren't available, but my fiancé insisted we reschedule our date for the following week since Julie was already there. That said, I supported my fiancé's decision to have her as the maid of honor because it was her choice, not mine. I thought I could tolerate Julie for one day for the sake of my future wife, but I was wrong. A few months ago, my fiancé mentioned that Julie wanted to propose to her boyfriend during our wedding reception. I firmly rejected the idea because that day was about us, not her. Of course, I would have been happy to help her with her proposal, but doing it at our wedding would steal the attention from the newlyweds. I had already heard other stories of people doing this, and I absolutely hated the idea. My fiancé agreed with me and told Julie she could propose on another date, or so I thought. During the wedding preparations, I was asked several times if she could make the proposal during our reception. Julie argued that it would be the only day both of them would be dressed formally for photos and that she wanted to have a nice memory. Each time, I had to refuse, explaining that the day was special for us and I didn't want it ruined. I was surprised by how insistent they were, especially my fiancé. I wanted my special day to be perfect, and I explained this to my fiancé for the fourth time, a month before the wedding. That was the last time we talked about it, and I thought they had finally given up on the idea. On the wedding day, I noticed my now wife and Julie talking secretly a few times, but I ignored it, thinking it was nothing. Everything, including the ceremony, was incredible until the reception. We were sitting down watching a slideshow of our beautiful memories and were about to have our couples dance when Julie suddenly grabbed the microphone and instructed everyone to be quiet. Julia took the microphone and instructed everyone to be silent. At that moment, I felt my stomach churn. Something inside me already knew what was about to happen, but I still held on to a sliver of hope that it could be something else. Anything other than what I feared. The entire room fell silent, and all eyes turned to her. Sitting beside my wife, I glanced at her, expecting her to say or do something to stop it. Instead, I saw a nervous, almost complicit smile. My heart raced, and a mix of anger and disappointment overwhelmed me. I'd like to take this special moment to share something very important, Julia began, with that pretentious tone I knew all too well. My fists clenched automatically. She was really doing this. She looked at her boyfriend, who seemed visibly uncomfortable, and began talking about how special he was to her, how much she loved him, while I, sitting there at my own wedding, was forced to watch the most pathetic and selfish display I had ever witnessed. My blood boiled with every word that came out of her mouth. All the attention, which should have been on me and my wife, was now entirely focused on her and the ridiculous scene she was creating. When she finally got down on one knee and proposed, a few people clapped. Others looked as uncomfortable as I felt. I turned to my wife again, hoping she would realize how wrong this was, but all she did was clap timidly, as if trying to justify her friend's behavior. That was the final straw. I stood up and excused myself. I didn't wait for her response or care what others would think. I walked straight outside, breathing deeply to try not to explode in front of everyone. I heard footsteps behind me, and within seconds, my wife was there, looking annoyed, as if I was the problem in this situation. "Why did you walk out like that?" "Everyone's looking," she snapped. "Why did I walk out?" "Are you seriously asking me that? Is that your priority right now? Not the fact that your friend just ruined our wedding? That you let this happen even after I said no?" I shot back, almost shouting. She began stammering about how she couldn't say no to Julia, about how it was her dream. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "And what about my dream? Our dream? Does that not matter to you? You allowed the day that was supposed to be ours to become a pathetic spectacle for your friend. Congratulations, you've ruined everything." She tried to defend herself, saying I was overreacting and that it was just a proposal, but I couldn't listen to another word. Every excuse she made only confirmed how little she respected me, how little she valued our relationship over her friend's childish whims. I knew then that this was the beginning of the end. I went back inside only to gather my things and leave that nightmare behind. Meanwhile, Julia was being congratulated by some guests as if she had done something wonderful. My wife didn't even try to stop me. When I walked out, no one seemed to notice or care. The following days were chaos. My wife tried to justify her actions multiple times, saying Julia regretted what she did and that it was all a misunderstanding. But I was finally seeing things clearly. Julia wasn't the real problem. The real problem was my wife, who never had the courage to stand up for me or prioritize us. I knew I couldn't stay with someone like that. I filed for divorce. She was shocked, tried crying and begging, but my mind was made up. It wasn't just about the wedding. It was about everything. It was about every time she put others before me. Every time she let Julia interfere in our lives. There was no going back, but I didn't just want a divorce. I wanted her to understand the weight of her choices. While we handled the divorce details, I made sure to be firm. I told all our friends and family exactly why we were separating. I detailed what happened at the wedding without holding back. The image she cared so much about began to crumble. Julia wasn't spared either. I made it a point to expose her actions on social media, sharing how she had hijacked our wedding for her own selfish gain. People sided with me. Julia lost many friends and even the respect of some family members. I later found out that her boyfriend, the one she proposed to, broke up with her shortly after, saying he didn't want to be with someone so self-centered. As for my ex-wife, she had to deal with the consequences of her choices. Without my presence, without the support I had always given her, she finally realized what she had lost. But for me, it was far too late. I moved on, free from that mess, knowing I would never allow anyone to disrespect me like that again. What torments me the most isn't what happened on the wedding day itself, but what it represented. A wedding is supposed to be a milestone, the beginning of a life where two people come together to build something greater as a team. But at that moment, I realized that ideal had never been our reality. I had never been her priority, and that became painfully clear on the one day that was supposed to be entirely about the two of us. Julia, with her arrogance and selfishness, grabbed the microphone and stole the spotlight, but it was my ex-wife who gave her the space to do it. Not only did she allow it to happen, but she also tried to convince me that I was overreacting, that it was just a small detail, a special moment for someone else. As if our day could be shared, as if the magic of our wedding wasn't something unique and sacred to us. It was the epitome of disregard, and honestly, a reflection of our entire relationship. I came to understand something I should have realized long before. I was never her priority. In some way, Julia was always more important. When plans were canceled because of Julia, when she allowed Julia to interfere in important moments, I was always pushed to the side. I kept telling myself these were small things, that in a relationship, you have to compromise, that friendships are important. But there's a line between compromising out of love and becoming a mere spectator in your own story. On the wedding day, I realized that for her, I was exactly that, a spectator in what was supposed to be her celebration. The irony is that Julia didn't even stay with the man she proposed to on my big day. It didn't take him long to see who she really was and break things off. That only made it all the more absurd that my ex-wife risked what we had for someone who clearly didn't understand respect. She threw away what should have been the beginning of our life together for a proposal that went nowhere. My ex-wife, of course, continued to think I was overreacting. Throughout the divorce process, she accused me of being selfish, of not understanding the importance of friendships, of making a big deal out of nothing. But the truth is, it wasn't just about Julia, and she knew it. I made it clear that the problem was much bigger. It wasn't just about that specific moment. It was about the pattern it represented. On our wedding day, I shouldn't have had to compete for attention with anyone. The focus should have been on us, our love, our union. And she couldn't grasp that. I tried to explain it to her, but the words started to feel empty. Why should I have to insist that someone understands something so simple? If she couldn't see that the wedding was about the two of us, that on that day, we should have been the center of attention, then she would never understand what it means to truly be committed to someone. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life being the last option, living in the shadow of her priorities. Today, looking back, I see how much I freed myself by deciding to leave that relationship. The wedding wasn't ruined just by Julia. It was ruined by my ex-wife's inability to stand up for me, to prioritize us. She always thought she was doing her best, but the truth is, she chose not to put me first. And I decided that if I'm not someone's priority, I'd rather be alone. I have no regrets. Some might think my reaction was exaggerated, but I know my worth. I don't want and won't accept being a mere spectator in my own life. especially on my wedding day. That day was supposed to be about us, and she chose to share the spotlight. That told me everything I needed to know. My ex-wife? She still tries to justify herself to others. She says I was selfish, that I didn't see her perspective. But anyone who truly understands what a relationship is knows that on that day, there was no other perspective. It was about us or it was about nothing. She chose nothing when she allowed Julia to steal our moment. As for me, I've moved on. I've learned that respect and prioritization are essential in any relationship. Love alone isn't enough if there's no balance, if one person always has to sacrifice while the other does nothing. Now, I'd rather be alone, but at peace than in a relationship where my value is constantly minimized. My marriage was a failure, but it taught me something valuable. Never accept less than what I deserve. And if I ever marry again, it will be with someone who understands that on that day, and every day, we will be each other's priority. Because without that, there's no union worth having. After everything that happened, life moved on, but not without leaving its marks on all of us. Each of us reaped the consequences of that fateful day and the months that followed. Me, my ex-wife, Julia, and even her ex-boyfriend. Our actions, choices, and values, or the lack thereof, shaped the paths we took afterward. My ex-wife, for instance, spent a long time convincing herself and others that I was the villain in the story. She repeated to everyone that I overreacted, that I was selfish and incapable of understanding the importance of friendships like the one she had with Julia. Some people believed her, of course, but many, after hearing the details of what happened at the wedding, couldn't justify her actions. Over time, she became increasingly isolated as those who had once admired us as a couple started questioning her ability to truly value the people around her. Worse still, she gradually realized the impact of her choices. Without the constant support I had provided, without someone always by her side, she began to see Julia for who she really was. Julia, the person she had prioritized over me countless times, didn't reciprocate that loyalty. After Julia's boyfriend ended their relationship, Julia's focus shifted, and my ex-wife started to feel what it was like to be second choice. When she needed advice, help, or simply someone to lean on, Julia was nowhere to be found. It became painfully clear to her that Julia wasn't a friend. She was someone who used others for her own benefit. That bitter realization was the price she paid for consistently putting me second. And Julia? Julia got exactly what she deserved. Her boyfriend left her shortly after her ridiculous stunt at my wedding. He made it clear he didn't want to be with someone so selfish and oblivious to how her actions affected others. Julia's downfall was quicker than I expected. Many people sided with me after I shared what had happened, and she lost the respect of friends and even some family members. Her reputation, once built on a facade of charm and subtle manipulation, crumbled. She tried to re-enter the social circles we had once shared, but no one wanted to be associated with a person who had ruined a wedding out of sheer selfishness. Julia's ex-boyfriend, on the other hand, moved on admirably. I learned through mutual acquaintances that he eventually found someone who truly respected and valued him. He got married a few years later to a woman described as the complete opposite of Julia: calm, kind, and unassuming. I was genuinely happy for him because, like me, he had been a victim of Julia's antics and ego. Seeing him find happiness was a small comfort amidst all the chaos. As for me, I moved on as well, but in ways I hadn't anticipated. After the divorce, I focused on myself and what truly mattered. I rediscovered hobbies I had neglected, reconnected with friends, and slowly rebuilt a life that was solely mine. At first, it was hard to deal with the disappointment, with the sense of having invested so much in someone who didn't value me. But over time, that hurt turned into gratitude for being free from something that would never have made me happy in the long run. Professionally, I achieved more than I ever thought possible. Without the constant drama and distractions my ex-wife and Julia brought into my life, I was able to fully dedicate myself to my career. Within a few years, I earned promotions and recognition. Today, I look back and realize that what happened at that wedding wasn't an end. It was the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where I am the priority in my own life. When it comes to love, I've decided to be more discerning. I'm in no rush, but I know that if I ever get married again, it will be with someone who respects me, values me, and understands the meaning of true partnership. Someone who, on our wedding day, will stand beside me wholeheartedly, knowing that the moment is about us and no one else. Ultimately, we all went our separate ways, but each of us carried the lessons of what happened. My ex-wife lost not just the marriage but also the chance to grow alongside me. Julia lost her reputation and the friendship she claimed to value so highly. Julia's ex-boyfriend found peace and happiness with someone who truly deserved him. And me? I gained something priceless. The clarity to know who I am, what I deserve, and the strength to never settle for anything less.